25% at the precinct this time around. So that's an awful lot of mail ballots. And apparently, and this surprised a lot of campaigns too, I think, an awful lot of the mail-in ballots came in late. So they're still coming in. They have a couple of days to get there. So it's going to be maybe, well, up to a week before we really get results from our registrar of voters. They're estimating, or no, they're estimating that they counted 56% of the votes that they expect to be cast, which means there's over 100,000, maybe 130,000 votes yet to be counted. But that's the registrar's estimate. I kind of think they're wrong. I kind of think voter turnout was a little low this time around in Santa Clara County. So I don't think there are going to be quite that many votes. But having said that, there are lots of votes. So we're going to talk about the mayor's race first. Matt Mahan, Cindy Chavez, and the numbers now are 52-48. Mahan ahead by 5,432 votes. That's more than Ricardo beat Cortez by. It's more than Gonzalez beat Pat Dando by. It's more than Susan Hammer beat Francis Bellini by. It's more than Danica Hayes beat Bart Collins by. It's a significant margin, but again, a lot of votes yet to be counted. Just a reminder of who the voters are. Next slide. In San Jose. Yep, and the next slide is coming right up. Yeah, there we go. So white voters, 37%. No, wait a minute. Yeah, Latino voters, 25. Asian voters. This is the growing group of voters in San Jose, and the people who are really the folks, the voters who are really going to make a difference. The black voters, just under 4%. So it's a very diverse electorate. That should be a favorable electorate for Cindy Chavez. It should have been a favorable electorate for Cindy Chavez. That's what a lot of us thought. She got a solid Latino vote, and if she got a solid Asian vote. And Cindy had significant support in the Vietnamese community, which is the rising voter population. Matt Mahan did some things to erode that support, and some people within that community did some mean things to Cindy to erode that support. But that should have been a favorable electorate for Cindy Chavez. But it looks like it wasn't favorable enough. It's close, it could change. All the races, not all of the races I'm going to talk about. Several of the races I'm going to talk about could get changed as the votes came in. So working from the numbers we've got today, why Mahan? Why did Mahan do better? I thought Cindy would win. I thought it would be close. I was wrong so far. I think what it comes down to, and this is oversimplifying, is Mahan ran as an outsider and the candidate of change. He had support from the business community. He had support especially from the apartment association and the Realtors Association and from Mayor Ricardo. They all took in a lot of money. But the key was he presented himself as an outsider and an agent of change in a time when a lot of people in San Jose are frustrated and disgusted and want to see change. People I know who I assumed would be supporting Cindy Chavez and didn't, because they blamed her, and Mahan helped structure this, for homelessness, for the level of homelessness, for the level of crime, for the level of blight. And especially if you get out to the west side and south side and South San Jose and Evergreen, people are frustrated about these things. I think people are, in my neighborhood, downtown Native Park, people there are frustrated about it. We live much more in the middle of it than a lot of other folks do. So there's that level of frustration. And somehow Cindy got blamed for it. She got presented. She didn't present herself exactly as the incumbent, as the candidate of the status quo, but she got kind of shoved into that box by the Mahan campaign and a lot of the negatives that were put out against her. And she ended up becoming the candidate of the establishment, the candidate of the status quo, which is totally unfair to Cindy Chavez, who's done more to change the status quo and to address homelessness and the other key issues than anybody else. And it's actually not all the county's responsibility. The city has a lot of responsibility for it. Cindy got kind of unfairly treated, and I have to say, I think she also came across as the establishment candidate because the political establishment of the valley did endorse her, pretty much right down the line. 9 out of 10 city council members, San Jose city council members endorsed her. Congress, state senate, state assembly, county supervisors, school board members, right down the line. If you went to her website, you had to scroll down quite a ways before you got to anybody but an elected official. And then you got to some of the big organizations like the Democratic Party, the South Bay Labor Council, and others. She had a lot of support from the traditional political establishment, but that political establishment wasn't able to come through for her sufficiently for her to win the election. As a longtime office holder, she seems to have been viewed as an insider and the virtual incumbent, and she was blamed for a lot of the current conditions unfairly, but I think that's the way she was perceived by enough voters to tip the balance towards mayhem. Negative mailers helped. I'll come back to those. And there is an irony in the way this played out, because it really, if you listen to the mayhem campaign, it really sounded like he was running against City Hall, although he was in City Hall. He was a council. He is a councilman. It really sounded like he was running against Mayor Liccardo and the status quo, but Mayor Liccardo supported him and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for him. So there's a certain irony in that. This race broke all spending records for San Jose mayor's contests. Over $8 million. We don't know the final total quite yet, but it's definitely over $8 million. $2 million that Chavez raised herself in the primary in general, and then $2.8 million that political action committees, especially the Labor Council, the Police Officers Association, the 49ers, maybe up to $700,000. They did spend some of that on other races. And Carl Guardino, former Silicon Valley Leadership Group leader, big business leader, also raised hundreds of thousands of dollars on Cindy's behalf. So she wasn't short of money, and neither was Matt Mahan. Really, he spent more than any previous candidate has as well. We raised $2.5 million himself, and then political action committees spent $1.5 million. Realtors, apartment owners, the Liccardo Political Action Committee, and others. So there was no lack of funding. And that money went all over the place. It was on broadcast TV a lot, that's expensive. It was on cable channels, that's a little less expensive, it was a lot. It was on streaming channels, that's still less expensive, but that still was a lot. And it was on, I saw it on YouTube. Ads for the candidates on YouTube. So it's all over the place. Plus they were Facebook, Instagram, all the other stuff, all the social media that they could be on. That's pretty cheap. And emails, texts. So there was a wider range of media, and it actually took more money to hit that wider range. I think they relied less on mail. I didn't get very much mail. Some people did. How many got more than 10 pieces of mail? San Jose.
But how much?
Yeah. Did you get 20? No. But remember the last Senate race, Cortese and Ravel? I mean, it was multiple mailings every day. So relying a little bit less on mail. It was challenging for the candidates this time, and it's become more and more challenging over the last decade or so as more people move to direct mail voting, voting by mail, because you don't know when they're voting. So I voted in the primary, and I voted early, and then I didn't get anything. So I thought, oh no, in the general, I'll vote late. I still didn't get much mail, and I don't know why, but that's the way it worked out for our house. Where I'm household, the candidate campaigns have a more complicated task of figuring out exactly when and where to spend their money. In this case, they had enough money, especially with the political action committees, to kind of spend it all over the place. on all sorts of things. I want to know one other difference, Mike.
Very well, right, Dwight.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah, so there's the money slide. It's a lot of money, a lot of outside money, but both candidates raised over $2 million, they each raised over $2 million. So that's a lot by the candidates. Go on to the next slide. Well, sorry, go back. Just brief, one more. Just briefly, so big 49ers money. I'm not sure that helped Cindy, that pissed a lot of people off. I mean, it bought a lot of ad time, but I'm not sure that helped that much. Next slide. So here's Sam Licardo raising money for Matt Mahan. He endorsed really late, but it was clear he was supporting Mahan early on because he was raising money in his political PAC. It's not technically his political PAC, but the political PAC that he raised money for. Put a lot of money into Mahan's campaign. Go on to the next one. And then even the Mercury News was outraged, as many of us were, about the nasty direct mailers coming out. Next slide. So here are a couple of slides that hit Cindy pretty hard on homelessness. This was on not supporting Asian American candidates. And I think this was effective in the Asian American Vietnamese community, particularly. But other slides go on here on crime, homelessness, even though again, Cindy and the County Board of Supervisors have done more to address that issue than anybody else. And then this was a hit piece on Mahan. There were hit pieces on Mahan. This was from the Labor Council. I don't think that was effective. Because of a couple of them were things that had happened on the brigade, is that right? Yeah. His tech company, which was an online sort of community organizing service, and he encouraged the NRA to be on it. He encouraged the anti-choice group to be on it. But he was pro-choice, and he said that, and his connection with NRA was loose at best. I just don't think those criticisms of him did very well. The best criticism, which Gary made very much, was he told novice. Less than 2 years in office, with virtually no record. When I interviewed them in the primary, I asked each candidate what was their greatest accomplishment. And he said, oh, getting the county to adopt Laura's law. Well, that was the county adopting it. And to date, it's had almost no effect anyway. And that was it. When I asked Cindy her greatest accomplishments, he said, oh, getting the county to buy 2 hospitals. Oh, getting health insurance for every child in Santa Clara County. And she could have gone on with other things that were way more significant. So somehow that didn't take, and the perception of him continued to be as an outsider. So here's the map. Flip to the next slide and we'll come back to this. So this is 2014 for Cortese and Licardo. And you can see it's pretty much an east-west split. Licardo on the west, Cortese on the east. Licardo did do well here in the middle. This is downtown, which was his council district. So he did win there. And then down at Evergreen, the villages and some precincts beyond that. They're pretty much east-west. And west has higher voter turnout. East, chronically low voter turnout. And you can see how close that race was, just a couple of thousand votes difference. So here's this time, and it's a different map. It's still east-west, but look up there in the northeast corner. That's Berryessa. That's Mahan. So he got into Berryessa significantly, and that's a higher turnout area on the east side.
Also Vietnamese area.
And also heavily Vietnamese. And here in South San, this is Evergreen. Licardo won kind of these precincts. but may have expanded that into other precincts. And again, this is the higher turnout area on the east side, so Mayhem did better in the two areas that have higher turnout on the east side. Significant Asian population, especially Vietnamese. Cindy, on the other hand, won some precincts on the west side, which Cortese didn't in District 1, and won some precincts in Willow Glen, South San Jose, Cambria and Pioneer. When I looked at this map, the map similar to this in primary, I was pretty optimistic for Cindy because she had jumped into the west with these precincts, and Mahan had not done that in the primary, but he did achieve that in the general. So that's really significant for the outcome that seems to favor him. Yeah. But just hold that for just a minute. We'll get to the city council elections. I just want to mention one more thing that was different about this race, and I don't know how to quantify it, but lots more people, and I mean tens of thousands more people, were able to see the candidates in candidate forums than before because of Zoom. So before, you know what happened like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when you went to a candidate forum with 20 other people and 20 people from the candidates teams, and that was it. It was rare to get a candidate forum in the up to 100 or beyond that. But in this campaign, there were dozens of candidate forums, and they were screened, and you can still go on and watch them. Willow Glen Neighborhood Association, My Show, Valley Politics, on Comcast Channel 30 on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock and Saturdays at 9 o'clock, and also available on YouTube. Carleton State University did one, a Zoom, and they had 200 people watching it as it happened, and then it was streamed. So there's all this access to the candidates, and I just kind of have a feeling Matt Mahan must have come across well to people on a lot of those. He's an articulate guy with answers to all the problems that are a little simple maybe, but that sells. Cindy maybe knows too much, and the answers got a little more complicated. So I would just note the effect of the streaming phenomenon on these races. Again, we don't have the final numbers in, but I do suspect turnout was down. I do suspect that hurt Chavez, and I do suspect that what we see in the next count today, 5 o'clock, be pretty similar to what we saw yesterday, and the gap will say maybe about the same. Well, meanwhile, as the slide says, exits loom in city elections. So we're going to have the most turnover on our city council that we've had in decades, really, probably since the first district election campaign in 1980, when almost all of them were new. So several new council members, and if the numbers hold for Mahan and also Sylvia Arenas in the supervisorial District 1, South County, if those numbers hold, that'll be 2 more vacancies on the council. So several new members, and then 2 vacancies for possibly 2 more, and of course, the new mayor. So we're going to see significant change. Let's go to District 3. That's downtown. That's my district. And it's the district that elected San Ricardo and Cindy Chavez after him, or before him, sorry. This district is 36% Latino, 32% white, 25% Asian, 5% black. And I'm going to give you the citizen voting age population for each of the districts, because it tells you a lot about the districts and how well the candidates fit the district. So in this case, we have a pretty clear victor. Next slide. And that's Omar Torres with 63% of the vote. So that's a pretty smashing victory, 37% for Irene Smith. Omar almost won it in the primary. I think it was 48%, but not quite. So he built on that, even with the higher turnout. He raised a fair amount of money, $182,000 in primary and general combined to Smith's $162,000. So they were competitive financially, and there wasn't so much independent expenditure money, but any money spent in this race. Tourist endorsements, the shocker was the Mercury News. Yeah. The Mercury News in the past has almost never endorsed a labor-supported candidate. And they actually endorsed 3 labor-supported candidates in the city council races. Peter Ortiz in District 5, Maya Esparza in District 7. And the reason is they were better candidates than their opponents. Even the Mercury could see that. And reluctantly, as they must have done it, they endorsed Omar and others. Omar also had the endorsements of Labor, Democratic Party, of course, leading conservation voters, the whole Democratic political establishment, from Congress right on down to school board members. And Omar's got deep roots in the neighborhood, in the district. He grew up in the district. He went to San Jose State University. He worked for the city. He knows the city and the district, and a real genuine, heartfelt commitment to the community in the district. Smith was endorsed by the business chamber and some more conservative groups. Very few elected officials. Deb Davis didn't swing it for her. In this district, I really think it comes down to 2 things. Omar ran an effective campaign and had deep support and a lot of volunteers, and the Democratic Party and the Labor folks also helped out there. Mercury News didn't hurt. They could have won without that. Here, the demographics just overwhelmingly favored Omar at, go back to the previous slide. Again, 36% Latino, 25% Asian, 5% Black. He did really well. Smith had other issues. I think she had personality issues. She didn't even win her own precinct. She didn't win a single precinct in Navy Park, which is her neighborhood, which is where she was supposed to have been active. A lot of us didn't actually know her before she entered the race. So in this case, I think we had one candidate who was a really good fit for the district, with deep roots in the district and significant support, and one who was not a good fit and didn't have that kind of connections and support in the district that you need to win. And there's the result. She worked hard. She was articulate. She was all over the place. She had a really enthusiastic team. She took great care to elaborate policy positions that lacked credibility to some readers, but nevertheless showed she'd been trying to think about it. But it wasn't good enough, and there's almost nothing she could have done to overcome the shortcomings of her as a fit for the district. Okay, next, there we go. This one was for me a harder race to handicap in advance between these 2 candidates. Campos did better in the primary election. Ortiz ran second. There was a field of several candidates, and it was hotly contested and split vote, kind of all over the place. But here we have Ortiz at 54% in this election, and Campos at 46%. So that could change. I don't think it will, but it could change. That's a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people, because we all probably know more about Nora than about Peter Ortiz, because Nora's been around a long time. And I would have thought the same in the district. So if I had to predict, I probably would have said, well, Nora will probably win. Because she was on the city council for 10 years. She filled a vacant position for a couple of years and then served 2 terms. Then she was in the assembly until she was turned out. And then she ran a couple more times. Way better known, a little bit better financed, endorsed by the South Bay Labor Council, Dawn, others like that. She raised $221,000 in the primary and general. Ortiz raised $141,000, so he was outspent by her. But I don't think he was outworked by her on the campaign trail. I think in retrospect, thinking about it, Peter Ortiz probably had better connections to the current range of activists on the east side. Nora maybe was a little bit disconnected from them because she's been out of community politics to some extent for actually quite a few years. But Peter's been in the middle of it, working with small businesses on Elm Rock Avenue, working with Mayfair organizations like Thomos and others. So I think that connection helped him. That's a community where these organizations influence their members and influence voters in the area, even though it's low turnout. They influence. They have an influence, and I think he had better connections with some of them. One a really important set of connections was with the Vietnamese American community. H.T. Nguyen ran third in the primary election in District 3. H.T. formed the Vietnamese Chamber of Commerce. She and her family have been extremely active in the Vietnamese community for years and years. She endorsed Peter Ortiz, and my guess is, my thinking is, he did a better job of reaching out to that community. Remember, the district is 37% Asian, so it's and that's what's the Vietnamese, so it's a big voting population. Finally, both of them were endorsed by the South Bay Labor Council, which freed up individual unions to do whatever they wanted for either candidate. And a few of them did much more for Peter Ortiz than any did for Nora Campos. So they were doing independent precinct walking and independent expenditures on mailings that had to help Ortiz. So it looks like Ortiz wins that race again. We don't know for sure. So District 7, this is South San Jose south of 280. I call it South Side. I don't think they call it South Side, but it helps me to kind of frame it. This district is 49% Asian, and that's heavily Vietnamese. 34% Latino, 14% white, 2% black. So here again, we have some issues about how well the candidates fit the district. And go on. This one I think has been decided. It's 57% for Ben Dion and 43% for Maya Sparta, the incumbent. Maya almost won it in the primary. She got 47.5% in the primary. You need 50% plus one vote to win in the primary. But that means 52.5% didn't vote for her, and they voted largely for Bien Dion and Van Le, splitting the Vietnamese vote. So Bien Dion managed to consolidate the Vietnamese vote and also include all those additional voters that voted in the general election and did not vote in the primary. The spending, as far as outspent, Bien Dion at $198,000 that she raised primary and general. He raised 169. She had more independent expenditures going for her from labor and others, but he had significant independent expenditures from the realtors, the apartment association people, and others. His endorsements didn't include much establishment support. Sam Licardo, Johnny Camus, Deb Davis, a group called Families and Homes, which is kind of a YIMBY group that fights SB9. I will get to that. As far as I got the Mercury News, again, there's a labor endorsed candidate getting the Mercury News, Democratic Party, of course, but it just wasn't enough. There were some pretty tough hit pieces on Esparza about her attendance and neglect of the neighborhoods and neglect of the failure to address crime, homelessness, like the same kinds of issues that I think were influencing voters in the mayor's race. Tough hit pieces. But in the end, I think what the outcome in this district all comes down to demographics again. It's 49% Asian. And the Vietnamese community in San Jose, my sense is they have a palpable urge to be represented. to be seen. And they haven't been on the council for, since part of what, replacing a Vietnamese incumbent, and since David Cohen was elected in District 4, replacing a Vietnamese incumbent. So I think that really rallied to Dion's support. I don't think he had a particularly effective campaign. I don't think he was a particularly effective candidate, but he was Vietnamese. And in a district where that vote was really, really significant and clearly turned out for him. So we have 3 new council members we've just talked about, and one more, Rosemary Kamei in District 1 on the west side, who was elected in the primary election with over 50% of the vote. So 4 new council members, plus 2 open seats, assuming the vote for Mahan and Arenas hold up. We're going to see increased Asian representation on the council because of Dion, but also Rosemary Kamei is part Chinese. We're going to see the liberal, labor-friendly caucus shrink a bit to 5 votes after Arenas leaves. But 5 is still a pretty high number out of 11. So you just need 1 more to be a majority. Might be hard to get that 1 more, but we'll see. It's going to depend a lot on who fills these vacant seats. But the big question is, can Mahan govern? And I think people were asking that during the election as well, when 9 out of 10 San Jose City Council members endorsed his opponents in Chavez, and a bunch of them are still going to be there when he gets to the council. Plus these new members, he's going to have 1 ally, Dion, but 1 doesn't get you very far. He's going to need to win over a lot of others to actually get what he wants. And then it's going to depend on whether he really has the skills to build a coalition and put together 6 votes. And we haven't seen that yet in his 2 years on the council. So does he have those skills? We'll see. But it will also depend on what the labor-friendly liberal faction manages to do. Will they stick together? Can they put together 6 votes? Can they get that 1 more vote to be the deciders on public policy? Now, having said that, most issues that come to the council are voted get a unanimous vote. So there's an awful lot that they're going to do that they'll all get along on. But there will be some big divisions on issues like land use, housing, homelessness, like some of Mahan's plans for metrics related to policy that determine whether you get a pay raise, on a whole bunch of things that he's proposed. We'll see if he can pull the vote, or if the other side can pull together 6 votes to oppose them. Having said that, remember Chuck Reed? Yeah, most of us have wishfully forgotten Chuck Reed, but when Chuck Reed was elected, we kind of said the same thing about Chuck Reed, because when he was on the council, he was usually the one when there was a 10-1 vote. So how does the 1 get up to 6 votes to get stuff done? Well, Chuck Reed actually did by winning over members of the council. He appointed Madison Nguyen, who was in the liberal labor faction when she first got there, vice mayor, and then she kind of became part of the Reed faction by using some budgetary rewards to pull some other people over. It might have also helped that the city was broke, that the budget was shrinking, not growing. And when you got a shrinking budget, it's hard for the liberals to take positions on new policies and programs. You really can't. So it was a shrinking city government, and it was the liberal faction was fighting to retain essential services and fighting to shrink and fighting to keep people employed. And Reed was pulling people over. Eventually, he had a governing majority through most of his 2 terms. Took a while. So we'll see whether Mahan is capable of that. One final word on the mayor's race. This mayor could be there for 10 years. Yeah, so we just changed the city charter in San Jose in the primary election. So we're moving mayoral elections like this one to presidential years. And the motivation for that from Democrats and labor and liberals in general was there's going to be a higher turnout in presidential elections. That means a different electorate, more working people, more minorities, more young people, which can also mean a different outcome, a more liberal outcome. I don't think if Cindy Chavez had been running in a presidential year, she'd be the one in the lead right now with incrementally higher turnout. So anyway, that was the motivation for changing it. So we have another election for mayor in 2 years. Yeah, so it starts probably now. Get your mailbox and your recycle bin ready and move to streaming so you don't have to walk from the TV. Vote early. Vote early. Yeah, but not too early. Wait for your ballot. So 2 years to the next election, and then whoever wins then can serve 2 full terms, 2 4-year terms. So this could be our mayor till 2032. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe it'll change. Let me take a few minutes on the County Board of Supervisors and the sheriff's race, and then we'll do some questions. County Supervisor, yeah, you got the map up there. The map explains everything on the outcome in this race. It's all about redistricting. The opponents, go to the next slide. Sylvia Arenas, City Councilwoman in District 8, the Evergreen, which was not in this supervisorial district previously. Johnny Camus, 47%. The city councilman previous to Matt Mahan from Almaden Valley, District 10, which was previously in this district, and then it wasn't with the redistricting. Los Gatos was also taken out. So the more conservative parts of the district got taken out. Camus had to move into the district to qualify to run. So now he can move back home. It's good news for Johnny Camus. The redistricting changed the demographics of the district and gave Arenas the base. She's pretty strong in that district. She's pretty well known. If you look at her range of endorsements and all the school board members and all the local leaders in the Evergreen. Camus actually did pretty well in South County. Gilroy, Morgan Hill, he didn't win all the precincts there by any means, but he got a lot of endorsements in South County. He had a fair amount of support. It's a little more conservative, and he's a little more conservative. So that made sense, but it wasn't enough. But the numbers and the demographics were just against him from the moment the redistricting happened. So, sheriff's race. We're going to have a new sheriff after 24 years. Thank God. You know, a lot of us liked and supported Lori Smith early on, but the last few years have been a disaster. It was time for her to go probably 8 years ago, certainly 4 years ago, and now she's gone. So she's resigned, and we'll have a new sheriff. We would have anyway because she wasn't running for re-election because she was in the middle of a civil trial on corruption charges. Here are the guys, Jensen and Johnson. I hope you remember the difference in the Jensen and the Johnson, Johnson and Jensen when you actually voted. This is an insider-outsider race. So Kevin Jensen was in the sheriff's office for years and years and really ran as the insider with the deputy sheriff's correctional officer support. And he had more money than Johnson. Johnson, retired police chief in Palo Alto. I think people like the sound of that. I don't know why. Maybe people in Palo Alto can explain that. But Johnson ran more or less as the outsider, and Johnson ran more or less as the insider, and both of them said, yeah, I'll reform the sheriff's department. And I think people were just skeptical about an insider achieving the reform and more optimistic about an outsider achieving reform. I think it's going to be shit hard for either one of them to do anything with that department, but maybe, excuse me, shit hard is a political science term. You might not be familiar with. I hate to use jargon, but it'll be a challenge for Johnson too. It's a pretty entrenched department. Of course, they'll have strong supervision from the County Board of Supervisors. So that's that. I guess bottom line, I would say, we'll take some questions, but I guess bottom line, I would say about all these races is, it's about how you fit the district. It's really important. And we saw that in the national races too. Because thankfully the Republicans picked some really bad candidates who weren't very good fits for their districts or states. And that really helped Democrats in this round. But especially in these local races, especially in city council races, fit for the district is just crucial. Let's go. Yeah.
You went over and the just kind of have a different base of winning or losing depending on which district or citywide. However, I did notice a common thread among all of them that in all four races in the San Jose city, it was a man against a woman and a man made it on top of all of those races. Do you think sexism or misogyny had a factor in some of those races?
That's a great observation and a really good question. That's yeah, we could have had a majority. We could have had 8 women on the city council if all the women in these races had won. Well, we won't because the men were winning. And it used to be, you all have been around here a long time, it used to be an advantage to be a woman in a race in San Jose and Santa Clara County. This makes it look like maybe that's not so much the case. And I don't know if it's misogyny. I don't want to say that. It could be. But in some of these races, the woman, Campos, Esparza, Chavez, police, were kind of the senior candidate. They've been around longer. They were virtually the incumbent. Esparza was the incumbent, but they came to be seen as the establishment that people didn't like. And that's a turnabout for the way women have been viewed in certainly local politics here. So some of that, maybe some misogyny, maybe other people have opinions about that. Yes.
I've heard that commentators say that young people are voting 2-1 Democratic over Republican. Is that been your experience?
Yes. Young people voting Democratic. And apparently there was a surge in young people voting in this election nationally, which clearly had a big impact on a lot of races. And that's a good thing. But you know, I taught at San Jose State for 40 years, and it was rare to find a Republican ever. So my view is about young people. My views about young people might be a little bit distorted. Even Frank Deal.
Why did the 49ers give so much money to city? And secondly, what's the process for replacing the city council members? What's your sense of what might happen there?
Why did the 49ers give so much money to Cindy Chavez? I really don't know. I really haven't figured that out. You know, there's the rationale that they're a big regional organization. They want a friendly mayor in a big city who's a regional leader. They certainly don't have that kind of leadership in Santa Clara, where they've also invested a horrendous amount of money for such a small town. It's really kind of appalling. But I don't know, I just don't understand what they expected from Cindy Chavez. They had worked closely with Cindy, you know, the 49ers were doing COVID injections, vaccinations in the stadium. They worked with her on some other regional issues through BTA. So they know her, they don't know Mayhem, but is that worth $700,000? I don't get it. Okay, so we got 2 vacancies on the city council. The council can appoint, or they can call a special election. I think they'll call special elections. That's what they've done in the past when Ken Yeager got elected to the board, when Chuck Reed got elected mayor, when there've been other vacancies. That costs a lot of money. But on the other hand, I think people would be kind of outraged if they just appoint. Plus, I think they'll have an awful hard time, the council that'll be there, putting together 5 or 6 votes on any given candidate. You know, once in a while, let's see, Margie Matthews, remember she served for a year or so. I forget.
District 4. District 4.
District 4, I forget why she was replacing somebody, but it was for a short period of time.
And since she got elected to the assembly, and then she replaced him as a interim until they had a special election.
Yeah,
And then Monwin on the.
Kenson, yeah, it was Kenson. So she was, that was until there was a special election, so presumably a special election, even though it costs a lot of money, and even though the city doesn't have a lot of money. And then we'll see who emerges, and I don't have any idea who the candidates might be in either of those two seats. But I can tell you that Jean Cohen at the Labor Council is thinking about it right now. And she's not the only one thinking about who can we get to run in those seats, because they're going to be really, really important. Yeah.
Compared to Emily's question, what about water board and Gary Green?
Well, what can we say? Good riddance. What can we say? Good riddance. She's still winning, right? Yeah. Yeah, I did look at that yesterday. Yeah, so Gary Kremens, the incumbent, is presumably out on the water board. There'll be a couple of new members. Jim Bell joins the board. That's going to be very interesting. Jim is a very thoughtful, assertive, aggressive, assertive, not aggressive, assertive political leader who does his homework more than almost anybody I've known in politics, except maybe Ron Darradon or it's going to be a different water board with these members, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so, what can we do to get rid of, San Jose water, make it a publicly owned utility?
What can we do to make San Jose Water a publicly owned utility? Well, I'm with you on it. If you want to start the campaign, it would have, I don't think the city's going to be ready to buy it. It would have to be some kind of initiative. It'll be really hard, really hard. Yeah,
So, the sheriff's race,
yeah.
were the votes, for Johnson spread in the county, or were there really pockets that went for one, the Jensen and Johnson?
In the Johnson race, the sheriff. Well, I thought that was my vote.
That's good news. Johnson, I want to go to San Jose.
Breaking news. We have a call.
Are we about on, sorry, quickly on the sheriff's race. Jensen's vote was more around the urban areas, and Johnson did really well through the middle of the county in the urban areas. Johnson
Yeah.
did really well. Yeah.
Why do we have two vacancies on the San Jose City Council with part of that? And why do you think the turnout was low? I think it was not that progressivism, the turnout would have been critical.
Okay, so two vacancies on the city council. Van Mahan leaves his council seat to be mayor, assuming the votes hold. Sylvia Arenas leaves her council seat to become a county supervisor, again, assuming those votes hold. So that's the two vacancies. What was the other question?
Why the turnout was so low?
Why the turnout? I don't know the turnout was low. I'm just suspicious that the county registrar of voters has overestimated the number of votes yet to be counted. That just doesn't seem credible to me that there could be 130,000 more votes out.
It's a CH, a Christensen hunch.
It's a Christensen hunch. More often wrong than right.
Terry, terrific as always. No competitive governor's race, no competitive senate race. That's why the turnout was so low. But that's
Could you do that? Because that's a really good point.
second point, and then the question. Everyone, when I was knocking on doors for Cindy, invariably, the question, what about the 49ers? It was just on everyone's mind, and it was, I gotta tell you, if I'm Cindy now, I'm thinking that $700,000 was the worst investment anyone ever made. Because it just played into, I think, the Mahan campaign, which is unfair that Cindy's on the take, that it was one organization. The question is, did we make a mistake in not giving Ricardo another 2 years and then switching to the mayor's race? Mahan is running for re-election. That's not 2 years.
Well,
It's 14 months. If we're gonna have a March presidential primary, that, and what are the odds that we're gonna have more than two candidates? So his ability to get 50% as the
In March.
incumbent mayor in March is gonna be, to me, there's only one candidate who could possibly run against him, and that's Cindy, who's got the structure to do it. But I'm interested in your comment on that.
I only can affirm what you've been saying. First of all, he confirmed what I was thinking about the 49ers, possibly hurting Cindy by his experience at the doorstep with voters. And it goes back to that question, none of us can really explain why they wanted to do that, so that's the bigger.
Maybe that's why they did it.
Maybe that's why. And then also noting that not having a governor's race and Senate race, contested race at the higher level would affect turnout. We'll see how it is statewide, but I suspect it'll be a little bit lower. And then finally, a reminder that the next mayor's race is actually 14 months away because of the Martin primary. So the question you asked was, would it have been better in the charter revision to not have made this a 2-year term, but to have extended Sam Licardo's term by 2 years? So we elect our new mayor in that first presidential election. And yes, in retrospect, it would have been better. Actually, and I thought so at the time, that's the way the Charter Revision Commission and the City Council went to give this the 2-year term and then 2 4-year terms, rather than to extend Licardo's term, which would have outraged a lot of people as well.
Yeah.
Are we okay for time?
We can do one more question. We're
Okay,
at 1:30.
So,
I'm sure Terry will stick around for a little bit after.
more red type, a endorsement by San Jose Mercury News. I'm curious, have you, in your research, seen any correlation between endorsements by the San Jose Mercury News and those who spend more money for advertisements in the San Jose Mercury News? Is there any correlation there? I'm not saying that there is. I
don't think there is, because Cindy would have won and got their endorsement. I don't know if you saw it, but I thought it was brilliant. They did a Sunday front page fold over, so your front page is half this fold over ad and then a full back page. And at the top of it, it said, "The truth about Cindy Chavez." And I thought, oh shit, that's gonna be a 1,000-word hit piece. But it wasn't, it was a pro-Cindy piece. It was really good. With our district attorney talking about how good she was on crime, and about and with several leading developers endorsing her, which is influential to some people, and with her family story and family photos. It was a really good piece. So she spent more on the Mercury than Mayhem did. No, I haven't seen that. Did you do a fold over? No, I didn't see that.
Ricardo did a 2 full-page thing that was like, Matt May has planned for something.
Oh, he did, yeah.
From his nonprofit.
Of course. But that came after the endorsement, which was actually done pretty early, well done in the primary. In general, the endorsement, the Mercury's been losing influence over the years, which I'm not sad about. I'm only sad that we don't have so much coverage of local politics. But the Mercury's been losing influence, but they still score pretty well on their endorsements. Not 100%, they never were 100%. It's a declining percentage, but it's still pretty good. And it still has an influence, particularly with, well, people who read newspapers. I didn't like to say, she said it, old people. He said it. But yeah, older people, people.
AKA voters.
AKA, yes, exactly. Peter says AKA voters, and that's exactly right. They are people who vote. Forrest, well, I thought that was our last question.
30-second insert.
Between the relationship of business, labor, and being influenced in the country.
Cindy really tried to break that by reaching out to business leaders, and she had some significant ones on her side. Carl Guardino. When Carl Guardino endorsed her, I thought, oh yeah, she's going to win, because Carl would only go with the winner. Carl was still a leadership group, and he's raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for candidates, including including for Cindy. And then she had others that were kind of surprising. David Neal, Sam Van Avery, Michael Mulcahy. She really was trying to get beyond that business labor divide. Jim Kinane, yeah. Trying to get beyond that business labor divide, but she didn't quite get there. I think we'll still see it on the city council as it comes in, and Mahan definitely was a business candidate, not all businesses, but significantly. The old chamber especially put a lot of money into it. So that's not going to go away. And that's all. Thank you.